Alright, so this one's a bit of an experiment. I'd never used acrylic markers before, and for some reason, I decided the first thing I'd do with them is the Chainsaw Man Volume 23 cover. It did not totally go to plan, mostly because of one thing I didn't see coming, which I'll get into, but I'm pretty happy where we landed it. Let me walk you through it. If you're new here, I'm Tim. I redraw manga art and mess around with different mediums on here. Today we're doing this Chainsaw Man cover. I'll talk a bit about why I love the series, a fair bit about the guy who made it, because he's genuinely very interesting and one of my favorite artists, and we'll get into how these markers made my life difficult. Nothing too serious, just a fun one today. So I came to Chainsaw Man through the anime back in 2022, and I really liked season 1. The thing I liked as an artist is that this is not trying to be clean or pretty. The action is messy, the characters move in this loose way, and it just works. That sort of rough energy is in the manga too. I rewatched it before starting this, mostly as an excuse. And then the Reze Arc movie came out, which honestly, to this day, is my favorite anime film I've seen. Mappa did the Bomb Girl arc as a full movie. The animation in the big fights is spectacular. But what got me is that it's a proper complete story. It's not part 1 of 3 leaving you hanging. Looking at you, Demon Slayer. It builds up and pays off, and the quieter character stuff actually lands. I was thinking about it a few days later, which doesn't happen that often. That's honestly part of why I wanted to draw something from the series. Okay, so I actually wanted to get into the guy behind all this, because the more you learn about him, the more his art style seems to make sense. His name is Tatsuki Fujimoto. He grew up in a small rural town up in Akita Prefecture, properly out in the countryside, away from the big cities, born in 1992, and the thing that surprised me the most is that he didn't set out to make manga at all. He actually wanted to be a film director. He went and studied film art at university and did oil paintings, which I think is one of the most important things to know about him, because you can see the painter and the filmmaker in basically everything he draws. The early career is wild too. Before he had anything close to a hit, he spent around 7 years just making one-shots. These self-contained short stories, and the pace was apparently insane. The story goes that he was sending his editor a new short basically every day. 7 years of grinding like that before his first proper serialized series, Fire Punch, in 2016. Then Chainsaw Man came out a couple years later. He's also a massive film and manga nerd, and he's pretty open about it too. Directors like Tarantino, Satoshi Kon, Hideki Anno, these are all people he's pointed to. And there's this great detail that when he was 17, his editor used to literally mail him boxes of manga and DVDs, with the whole idea being that to make great stuff, you gotta take in a ton of great stuff first. He basically treats consuming other people's work as part of the job. A few more things that made me like him even more. His influence on modern manga is honestly nuts. A bunch of old assistants went to make some of the biggest ongoing series. Spy Family, Dan Da Dan, Hell's Paradise, all came out from people who worked alongside him. And from what I've read, it wasn't really a teacher and students thing, more like a room full of people learning off each other. He is also way more than just an action guy. He did these 2 one-shots, Look Back and Goodbye Eri, that were completely different, really quiet, emotional stories about making art and dealing with grief. Look Back got turned into an award-winning film. If you've seen any of Chainsaw Man and you think he's just a gore and chaos guy, these 2 will flip that pretty quickly. And then my favorite fact, which I think tells you everything about him. For years, he ran a social media account where he pretended to be his own little sister, like an imaginary primary school age sister, posting reviews of his manga. He committed to it so hard that the platform actually deleted the account because of the fact of the age she'd listed. He's a bit more of an oddball in the best way, and I genuinely think that's part of why his work feels so alive and unpredictable. So onto the art, since that's the main reason we're here, I guess. The first thing is that the film director brain, he frames his pages like camera shots. The angles, the use of empty space, the way he'll cut from total chaos straight to something really still. It reads more like storyboards than actual manga paneling sometimes. The second thing is the line work. This is where the oil painting background comes through. It's not the super clean, polished line you get from other Jump comics. It's a bit scratchy and fast, even a little ugly on purpose. And that's exactly why the emotional bits and the violent bits hit the way they do. It feels like it was drawn by hand by a person, not smoothed out into nothing. And then the covers. His covers are kind of their own art form. They read almost like posters. Look at this one. It's flat, yellow, pink, slashes all across it, grey machinery. There's barely even a scene, it's just colour, shape, attitude. And that's the exact thing that made me want to try it. And it's also the thing that made it really hard, which we'll get into now. Quick setup stuff first. Work 20 by 30 centimeters. The new thing this time was acrylic markers. I got a set off Amazon, first time using anything like them. And I'll say straight up, the pigment on these is unreal. They're so saturated and opaque. The color just sits on the page, super solid, bright, which for a cover like this, with these intense yellows and pinks, is kind of perfect. But that same thing, how strong and opaque they are, turned into my biggest problem. So here's what actually nearly broke me on this one: color matching. With a set like this, you get whatever colors come in the pack, and acrylic markers isn't kind of like normal acrylic paints, where you can just mix two colors together on the palette until you hit the exact shade of what you want. With the markers, what's in the pen is basically all you get. So I'm sitting here holding pens against the printed cover. That's closed, but it's not the right yellow, or that's not kind of the right gray. And there's not really much you can do about it. And because they're so opaque, you can't really layer your way out of it either, like I could with alcohol markers. With a lot of mediums, you put a light wash over the top and nudge a color warmer or cooler. But acrylic markers just covers whatever's underneath. So if a color's slightly off, layering doesn't blend it, it just sits on top of it and colors it. The worst bits were all the in-between colors. That acid yellow has a really specific tone. The flesh and bone shapes have these muddy, slightly off skin tones that aren't a clean color. None of those are just open the right marker and go. So a big chunk of this drawing was me accepting the closest color match I had and committing to it rather than getting it exact. If you're getting into acrylic markers, that's the thing for you to know going in. The pigment's amazing, but you're kind of locked into the colors of the set. I started with a light pencil on the drawing, just getting the proportions and the placement right off the printed reference. Where the figure sits, where the blades cross. Cover like this, if the layout's off, the whole thing falls apart, so I spent a bit of time here before any color goes down. Then the background. I did the yellow first, working around the figure and the blades. Doing the big background color early means I can lay everything else on top and not fight around it later. And then the magenta, those pink slashes cutting through. These I do fairly quickly and committed because the markers dry fast, and if you go slow or hesitate, you get streaks of overlap lines where one stroke dried before the next one met it. Then the organic stuff. The muscle, the bones, the shapes, the flesh, tones. This is the fiddly part. Lots of small value shifts that the markers don't really want to do. So it's a lot of little overlapping strokes and just picking the closest colors I had to matching them to make it work, and then layer over each other. The mechanical head, the grey machinery, the tech, the rivets, I kept the edges clean on purpose so it pops against the messy kind of organic stuff around it. So acrylic markers, verdict is still split. The pigment is genuinely fantastic for bold, flat, graphic stuff like this. They're brilliant. The color matching is a real limitation and flat. Even coverage is harder than it looks, so I've got some practicing to do. Funny thing though, because I couldn't match every color exactly, and because the markers are a bit rough to control, the whole thing ended up with this slightly imperfect handmade feel. A perfectly clean version probably would have looked less like his art, not more. I'd use them again. I'd just probably buy a bigger set, so I've got more colors to pick from. Anyway, that's the volume 23 cover in acrylic markers from someone who'd never used them before. pretty happy with it overall. If there's a cover you want me to try next, drop in the comments. I actually do read all of them and I try to reply to all of them. And let me know if you used acrylic markers before and how you dealt with color matching, because I need your help. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, click like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.